Underneath the arches, we dream our dreams away. Underneath the arches, on cobblestones we lay. Every night you'll find I am tired out and worn, happy when the daylight comes creeping.
This is a very English-styled occasion, Gilbert and George. I think the idea is that the audience have come for a 5 o'clock talk over tea and cucumber sandwiches. And in a way, I'm curious as to the way that the world sees you. In a way, the museum here in Austria is billing you as very much English artists, but British artists too. You know, you are literally flying the flag on the outside of the building and in the exhibition. But of course, you're also fundamentally international artists. How do you see yourselves? Is it all of those things, or do those kind of self-definitions not matter at all to you?
I think we've always tried to fight that sort of brackets and barriers and boxes in the art world. We rather dislike that. We always think that the world's collections are arranged in the wrong way. You know, they have the Flemish room and then the Italian room and then the next room. We think it would be much better to do it chronologically, to have just all the good pictures from 1500s, all the good pictures from 1600s. We don't believe that artists exist in isolation.
George, pull it up.
But you had it, so you gave it to George, so it must be on.
Very simple for us, much more simple, because we just want to be the best artist. We don't care if we are international or whatever it is. We want to be the best.
George, you can repeat the point you were making. Sorry, now the microphone's working. I think that you have to hold it up. Take that every which way you will, but just repeat that point.
No, we just think that all the ideas that artists are the Flemish and the Dutch and the different movements in the national museums of the world should change that and just do it chronologically. So you just see a room of 1,500 pictures, the best ones from 1600, 18th century, 17th century, because all of the good artists from the Scandinavian countries did some of their best work in the Mediterranean, and it's all mixed up, the art world. It can't be seen in terms of nationality like that. That's why we object very, very strongly to the racism of Tate Gallery, because they changed the Tate Gallery from Tate to Tate Britain and Tate Modern, and we think that's very wrong. I don't believe you can do art by passport.
If
they have a Tate Modern, then the other one should be called Tate Old Fashioned. Yeah. And if one's called Tate Britain, the other should be called Tate Foreign.
Yeah, it feels you have a modern artist and you have English modern artist down there. They have a different kind of category, and we don't believe that. We don't only believe in good or bad artists. That's about it. And that is for international always, no? When you think of the famous artist, you don't think, oh, Italian or this or that. It's just you like that one. Huh? That's what's important to us.
Even the Paris school, most of the artists were from all over the world. Many weren't even from Paris.
But more and more now, they're trying to divide it up into German artists, the English artists, the Dutch artists, the American artists, Indian artists, Chinese artists, and we don't believe in that. We don't only believe the visionary artists that are able to speak today.
What was the British or the London art world like when the two of you first came together in the late 60s at St Martin's School of Art? What was the scene then?
Well, I think the world scene at that time was just minute. There was a little 2 or 3 galleries in London, most of which only showed overseas artists. And there was one gallery in New York, Paris, and Düsseldorf. It was a tiny, tiny family of art world. Now, of course, it's massive. It's enormous now. It's the art world we really dreamt of, that everyone understood that art was part of life. We always say that in the late 60s and early 70s, you could walk through the streets of any city and say to people, name a living artist. They wouldn't be able to. They only knew the name of long dead artists. They knew the name of living murderers, sports people, politicians, pop stars, but not artists. That's all changed. Everyone now would be able to give you the name of 5 or 6 living artists.
Not that we were unhappy those days, because we thought we were on top of the world, huh? In 1968, 68, 69, because we really believed at that time we were inventing a new way of making art, and everything that was in the galleries for us was old-fashioned rubbish. You know?
In a way, you did reinvent art. I think people are very curious, though, to know how that came about. I mean, the two of you came from different countries. very much different places. You met at art school. Was it like St. Paul's conversion? Was it this great moment when the two of you suddenly encountered each other, or was it a more slow fusion of creative talent?
It was like that, but not quite so Christian. No, I think we had an enormous luck from the very beginning, really. Just enormous luck. Very often bad luck leading to good luck. Just after leaving college, there was announced that there would be an international traveling art show called When Attitudes Become Form. And wherever it landed in a city, a local curator would be asked to add 3 or 4 artists to the exhibition. And it was coming to London, to the ICA. So we were very, very excited because we knew the person who was selecting the artists and he knew us. And then, to our amazement, he didn't choose us. So we were thrust into enormous doom and disaster. And we thought, there's nothing we can do. This unique opportunity is going to pass us by. We're lost forever. And then we thought, we'll have to do something about it. All we could do about it was to gate crash to the opening, private view, with our heads and hands with the multicolored bronze paint, and be living sculptures. And we did that and entirely stole the show. It was an enormous success. And that evening, one of the leading art dealers in the world, Conrad Fischer of Düsseldorf, invited us to join his gallery. So it was, again, bad luck leading to good luck.
But it was not only that, because at the end of 1967, when we finished St. Martin's School of Art, we were left stranded outside, alone, no? And we still wanted to be artists without a studio. No? We wanted to be artists, and so we have this visionary idea that a living sculpture could be without a studio, without a gallery, without anything. Just walk in the streets of London, you could be art. No? And that was this idea that we became the living sculpture that didn't need a bronze sculpture or metallic sculpture or plastic sculpture. We were able to create an entire world with us inside that one. And that was the biggest invention for us, now, that we were able to speak of our emotional feeling, that we felt being alive. That was a big sculpture for us.
Are you still living sculptures? Are you a sculpture here today, this afternoon, for this audience?
We will ask these good people later.
But we are still the artists speaking. We are leaving what you call big pictures behind it, but it is us speaking to the viewer in different forms. So we never changed from that.
So when you decided you were going to work together, it's interesting, you just said that when you left art school you felt very much alone. I think a lot of students do, but you had each other. But do you think deep down you thought you might work together for a bit and then go your own separate ways? Or did it seem clear from very early on that you would always work together?
We weren't conscious at all. It's more like something that came over us, like a cloud. I think we were already creating art together and people were commenting on that before we realized it, really. I think it was all circumstances, because most of the students at St. Martin's School of Art had plans to become artists. They would work at becoming an artist. And we didn't think that because we thought we were artists anyway. So they thought if they got part-time teaching jobs, it would enable them to live and eat and have a flat and then find time to make art. Or they would apply for an Arts Council grant or for a subsidized studio. None of those things were available to us. And so we were the artists. It was extraordinary. It was much better.
Not only that, because even in some way, two people became a fantastic composition. One is not so interesting. No? And so not only that, we were able at the beginning, because when we did this, this so-called extreme artwork those days, no, we always felt isolated in some way. We felt attacked from every corner. So two people was much better to defend ourselves against the outside world. And we needed ourselves very, very much. And we need ourselves even more now. We know that we would never be able to make one single artwork alone.
But then you very quickly used photography as a way of,
drawings first, and all kind of forms, films, and all kind of. We were trying to find our way at the beginning.
So you won't find a way of documenting what you did. You were trying to find a way of expressing what it was you wanted to express.
I think we just wanted to find a way to send messages, to speak to people. We had a great urge to go out there in the world and have our say. We always say that it's no good leaving the future to the politicians and the church and the police. It's up to everyone to make a contribution and take things forward, because we are so privileged because of all the efforts of the long dead, all the things that people are dead and fought for us. It's up to us to be grateful for that and take it forward.
We try to do a kind of moral art, We were not involved in doing what they call doing abstract art. We wanted to be a human art that was part of morality or changing the world. That was always our intention at the beginning.
And we wanted to make it international and universal and cutting across class and creed and color. So we were only dealing and addressing the great universals: death,
Hope,
life,
fear,
sex,
money,
race,
religion.
and that's about it. That's our palette, you could say.
But it was very interesting at the beginning. We never wanted to be some artists that are up there doing some abstract art that very few could understand. We always wanted to deal with what they call issues that are exactly in every single person, like the unhappiness of being alive and what you do, and religion, pain, sin, mortal sin, behavior, and all this stuff. So we are not different than any other person. That's why we try to be, humanistic art.
Have you succeeded in reaching as many people as you thought possible, or is that by definition a question that you have to answer no, because you can't reach everyone? I mean, you said when you were younger you wanted art for all. How far have you gone down that route?
I think because we realized that formalistic art alienated people. All of the students at St. Martin's and the teachers were dealing with shape, form, and color. It didn't have any content or emotion or color or sex or feeling or sentiment. It was just art about art. And we didn't like that. We thought that eliminated 99% of the world's population. It only meant something in some buildings in London, Paris, and New York. And it was excluding people. It was cruel to people. And all of those artists and students believed that they were superior. And the fewer people understood what they were doing, the more superior they felt. And they also believed that all the people outside of the art world, all the people on the streets and driving the cars and in the factories, were stupid and had no value. And only people who were refined and special meant something. And we fought against all of that elitism. We wanted an art for all.
And then we realized that we wanted to make an art that is visually very powerful, that what we call in your face. And we wanted to seduce the viewer, and then first they have to what we call be seduced, and then we can deal with all kind of what we call campaigning artists, we always used to call us. So campaigning.
So, by the way, I love the fact that when you're answering a question about art for all, there's a little baby crying in the distance. I mean, that's pretty good. You've got the youth sorted out, and probably a whole demographic spectrum too. This idea, though, of the eliteness of the art world. Do you think that has changed? Has the art world become broader? I mean, you said it's got bigger, but has it become broader and more outreaching?
Yes, more and more people go to more and more galleries and museums than ever before. Maybe except for the 19th century, when it was enormously active as well. But we had to experiment at first. We didn't have our own form on leaving college. We didn't run out of college and buy half a dozen canvases or a bag of plaster of Paris. We experimented at first. We did huge charcoal on paper sculptures, which were copied from negative images. And people loved them so much for their texture and their color and the edges of the paper and things, that we stopped because they weren't getting what we were saying to them. They were getting the form was no good. So we changed that.
Yes, we cut our artistic hands off. So it's very important.
So in a way, you were afraid that the fact that they were perceiving these objects to be beautiful art
as aesthetics.
Yes.
And then we realized the power of the negative. People always say photograph, that you take photographs. Without being too stupid, you don't actually take a photograph. When you press the button, you take a negative. Yeah? And we realized the power of the negative, because if you take a family to a museum, a national museum, and you pass a marble nude, there's no problem. If you pass an etching of a nude, there's no problem. An oil paint of a nude, there's no problem. A tribal African explicit sexual sculpture, there's no problem. In the next room, if there are life-size photographic images of naked people, there will be a problem. There will be signs up. Yeah? Because it's more truthful, it's more actual. The other ones maybe were all invented, we don't know. Maybe those bronze and marble ladies never even lived. Yeah? So we started to use the negative.
Yes, because we felt, because in the 15th, the Renaissance, in some way they're trying to make an artwork that looks like a color photograph for many, many years. And after, after when they discovered photography, all the art started to look more like caricatures. No? If you look at Picasso, everybody, it's a caricature of an image, no? Or abstract, one of the two things. No?
We think the artist panicked when the photograph arrived. They couldn't embrace it, so they went the other way. You know?
Felt threatened.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we think we've embraced that entirely and accepted that as a form and a meaning and a way of making our own language, really.
You used the word seduce to begin with. You said you wanted to seduce the viewer.
Yeah.
Does that still apply? And did that apply in various series you did in the late 70s, the Dirty Words pictures, in the 90s, the Naked Shit pictures? Or were those provocations, confrontations?
I think we've always wanted to be, like everyone, we always wanted to be loved. We wanted to be accepted. And we always felt that we had opposition, not so much ever from the general public, but from the media. All of our pictures, we see them as visual love letters from us to the people. We never did an art that would be offensive to people. Quite the opposite, in fact.
But they have to attract what you call, they have to be confrontational, they have to attract, if they wouldn't attract confrontation, it would be boring and nobody would like, it wouldn't mean anything. It has to mean something, really. And they have to ask questions in front of it. That's very important. If they don't ask questions, they don't threaten us, we wouldn't do it. No? We want to be threatened by them, and we threaten them back in some way.
No, absolutely.
There are plenty of artworks that don't ask questions. We say, to put it very simply, a landscape on a canvas in a museum, people will walk past and look and nod, and it doesn't actually say something to the viewer, because nature is supposed to be made by God or someone, so there's no moral issue. But if there's a policeman on the horizon and a tramp in the foreground masturbating, then you have a picture to stop and look at. It's very simple. Something's
dilemma. That's it.
We forget the name of the artist, I'm afraid.
The other theme about your work, I mean, you mentioned those very early drawings that you did, which did have a kind of rural or organic feel to them. I mean, there was foliage, there were trees there, and this was in a sense quite rural. But ever since then, I mean, exclusively so, you've been urban artists at London, which I want to talk about in a minute. But I'm curious as to whether you could ever now conceive of returning to make work that was based around the countryside, or whether you could ever go and live and work in the countryside.
I mean, you mean like when we started out, we were still babies in the woods, no? That's it, because we came from the woods, you know? But we ended up in the city, and after that, we never wanted to go back into the woods. You know?
It took us a long time to become city artists, because at the beginning we didn't read newspapers or have a television. We were both brought up in the country, and we were expressing ourselves in the city, but expressing ourselves with nature, using parks and things. It wasn't really until the Dirty Words pictures that we completely realized that we were in the city and that was it, that was our future. And we always remember a few years later that we'd forgotten our dislike of the countryside, and we were lulled into a strange position, and then somebody invited us down to stay with them in the country in North Devon, and we went down on the train, and we stayed at a little hotel and woke up in the morning, and it was so quiet we couldn't even sleep, so we got out of bed and walked up through the village, and we thought, it's extraordinary, maybe we've been wrong about the countryside. It's very, very beautiful, and it was so quiet you could hear insects. There was no traffic. It was set on an estuary, and all these extraordinary estuary birds swooping down. And we were very, very moved by the beauty of just the natural landscape. And we walked up through the village high street with very beautiful old buildings. And then we came to the parish church, the medieval parish church, with lovely flowers and the old graves. And we were enchanted by it all. And outside the parish church there was a beautiful young couple, a boy and a girl, with a baby in a pram. And we thought that just completes this extraordinary idyll. We were almost in tears at the beauty of it. And we turned and we said to them, "Good morning." And the young man turned and said, "Fuck off, you weird-looking cunts." Now we realized what we thought about the country. No, we realized that the city is a tolerant place. Something like that would never happen in the city.
But we do believe that maybe selling at the beginning spoiled us.
Selling?
Selling. Because when we did these beautiful drawings, we did these first drawings in 1970, and we showed them in Düsseldorf for the first time, and with Konrad Fischer Gallery, and we did walking, viewing, and relaxing. There were 3 drawings, and he asked us, how much should we sell these drawings? We didn't know, and we had no idea how much that should be, and we said, why not £1,000? No? And that was a lot of money at that time. No? And so next day we sold it. It was extraordinary. That's why we started to become the urban drunken series. And after that, we never looked back. We never back into the country again because we were more drunk than sober. No?
So hold the front page. Gilbert and George now have said that the art market corrupts.
Oh yes, it was quite good. But it was quite exciting because for the first time we were able to be what you call spoiled, no? And making art at the same time. We were so full of confidence in our new vision because of that, before even to sell an artwork. Can you imagine at that time that nobody was able to sell a piece of art? They were all teachers in some way, and we were able to do this crazy art like drinking pieces or dead boards, dusty corner, and actually make money to be able to live from it. And that for us was extraordinary.
So one of the things you were able to do is buy a house, and obviously you've told us very eloquently about why you don't want to go to the countryside, and you've remained in this house, in this street, Fournier Street. You've worked there for the last 40 years. And even in the Jack Freak Pictures upstairs, where there are maps of London, it is the roads and the streets around Fournier Street. So it's not just London, or the city and London in particular, it's actually a very particular area of London that you live and work in. What is it about that area? Why has it continued to hold your interest, imagination, and inspire you?
It's very simply that we feel we're living in the center of the universe there. It's changing all the time. It's an extraordinary melting pot. People from all over the world walk up and down this very simple street called Brick Lane. You can go anywhere in the world, and within 10 minutes somebody's mentioned Brick Lane, whether it's on an aeroplane or a hotel. We're absolutely enchanted by the neighborhood.
Yes, but not only that, because once we were able, again, to do with money, to buy a house in 1973, and for 5 years, we restored our house. And that house became all the big sculpture in some way. And not only that, because all the floorboards became our art, all the ceilings became our art, all the street in front of our house became our art, all the trees became our art. So everything became this huge living sculpture. And we are still doing that. We never walk more than 100 meters to take images to be inspired.
We always said that if somebody came from a distant planet and said they have 5 minutes to film a typical planet Earth place, around Liverpool Street or Brick Lane would be ideal. You would know you were in the modern. And anything that happens in the world has already been around in our neighborhood. All the stickers threatened the world, and then the Twin Towers were blown up. It was all brewing there anyway.
And then that's why we became the mad monks of Fournier Street. And it's very interesting because then we tried to retreat totally to become more and more the solid sculpture. That's why we don't have friends, we don't go to art galleries, we don't go to concerts. We are becoming like what you call solid figures that are standing still there.
So the people are worried that we don't like it, that it's changed the neighborhood. It hasn't changed, it is changing, it continues to change. We've seen the synagogue turn into a mosque. We've seen the vicarage turn into a small art gallery. We've seen the church become an event center. We've seen the kosher wine shop become a Hindi music center. The Polish delicatessen is an adult clothing shop. Even the men's public lavatories on Whitechapel have become an Indian restaurant. Some younger friends were recommending it to us. They said it's delicious food and the service is very good, and it's eat in or take away. I said it always was. They're a bit slow, this lot, aren't they?
So this whole area you have photographed, you've collected...
Taking images, we call it.
Sorry, taken images. You've collected images, signs, symbols, and then this becomes part of your palette.
Right.
And then there's this mystical process of how you make pictures. And I know that's changed with the computer, and again, let's come on to that in a minute. But everyone is curious as to how two people can make creative decisions continuously, seemingly, without conflict. Do you still deny that there is ever conflict in your creative process?
Of course.
Yeah, deny, absolutely.
No, we think, first of all, it's very important to say that we're very conscious every day of the battle of life, of the people who are being slaughtered all over the world as we speak. The rows, the arguments, the conflicts. We thought from a very early time as artists that we shouldn't join in that. We should be productive and forward-looking.
It's very simple, because we are always alone, so we get these urges all the time, no? Like we have the urges of the graffiti, we have the urges over the tramps in our street, no? Then we start to make pictures about that, and we see the black trees in our street. Then we started to see young people, no? Then we did a 1980 piece and all the time. Then we became furious with religion, and we do the religious piece, and then we are doing what does it mean, a Union Jack on top of us, and we doing those kind of pieces all the time. The feeling, what surrounds us, that becomes the subjects, no? And we are able to explore that in an extraordinary way, like a human person that feels frustrated in some way inside yourself, no? And we want to let it all out and shoot it on the wall, graffitiing the rich people's houses.
So it's often an image or a symbol. Could be the Union Jack, it could be graffiti, in dirty words on walls, and that's the beginning of an idea. Or is it the emotion that you want to express? Because you always work in series, don't you? You always make groups of works.
It's not based on ideas. It's not based, like you said, there should be conflict, or people think we bounce ideas off each other. How we are at any one time is how the pictures will be.
Yes.
They're lifted directly out from inside of ourselves. We don't snatch ideas or images out of the air. Everyone knows how they feel today, what their life is like. If you say 1981, people know how they were in 1981. So they're lifted out from inside. We found a marvelous system.
Yet we don't want to be artistic. That's very important to us.
We never go to the
We
studio
wanted
with
to
ideas.
be real.
Yeah.
That's what we wanted to be real, the inner feeling that's disturbed us. That's it. We never want to be artists. We never want to do a beautiful picture. We want to be liberating ourselves from the inner side, inside.
So this seems to imply that it's not a detached process that you're engaged with. It is a total immersion. It's an exhausting, draining process.
Yes.
Is that right?
Day and night. We never, for the last 43 years, we worked day and night. That's it. In one big, mad sculpture.
Ongoing.
Oh, yes. Non-stop. It is completely...
But do you have some notion of do you have some distant idea of, I think most human beings believe that perfection or perfectibility is impossible, but do you have some abstract, I know you don't believe in abstract, but maybe I'll use a different term. A dirty idea. Do you have an idea that somewhere you are aspiring to realize something you've never quite realized? Or when you finish a series, do you feel, no, we've realized what we want to realize?
Not even that, because we have 4 or 5 or maybe more lines of research going on. Thoughts and feelings, nothing very definite. And when we have to make the pictures, when we stop to make pictures, whichever line is most advanced, that's the one we will take. But the other lines go on as well. Some of them vanish and some of them continue.
And we have many lines going on, because not only that, the whole sculpture is doing the invitation card, doing the poster, doing installation, doing the museum show, doing the private gallery show, doing the catalogs, the books. We are designing everything. So sometimes we do a new group of works, and we are totally frustrated because we think, we have to have museum shows. If not, nobody can see our work. So in the moment that we have all these museum shows like now going on, we feel, my God, we should be in the studio doing our new works. No? So it's all a crisis of...
It's interesting that the term Jack Freak is totally your invention, and yet it seems incredibly familiar. It feels like something that's been in the culture a long time. But I think Stella has said, and a number of others, that one of the interpretations of Jack Freak is the idea of the outsider. You said that when you left art school, you felt that you were outsiders. Do you still feel outsiders now?
In some way, we still feel outsiders. In another way, we feel that the world has changed so much, the Western world has changed so much since 1969, that it has somehow accommodated us. It is a totally different world. Everything is completely different. It's very difficult to remember how horrible and bigoted and difficult and it was a wretched place compared with now.
That's a very smart answer, because of course what I was hoping you'd say is that you felt that you were still outsiders totally, and then I would be able to say, well, you've shown at Tate Modern, you've shown at major museums in the world, you've represented Britain at the Venice Biennale, but you say you haven't changed, the world has changed, and you've now become part of that extended art world.
We were on the outside of the periphery of the art world, and we stayed there, but the art world has moved around to make us more central. But we're still outsiders for many people, for many museums, for many areas of the media. We're still there.
But we want to be outsiders. We want to be alone. We don't want to out to see people. It's very important to us. We don't want it. We like to be locked up in Fournier Street. We like it. That's very important. Because we realize we learn to live with ourselves. At the beginning, we wanted friends. We wanted to be loved. And after we realized we don't need to be loved.
But you do a wonderful job of hiding that, because when you're out with installing museum exhibitions, you talk to everyone who comes to talk to you. You never refuse a photograph or an autograph. You do all the press. Is that part of the job of being living sculptures, of getting the work out there then?
You know, we feel that it's very necessary to be gentle in that way, because access to contemporary art shows, living artists, is very, very rare. It's not like football or murder that happens every day and every weekend, or even jazz, which is twice a year festival in every damn silly city. Yeah? To see an exhibition of ours in Linz took 40 years. Yeah? There probably will never be another one. Even in London, we had 1, 2, or 3 public shows. It'll be years before we have another one. Many, many people will be dead, and there'll be young people who never saw the last show before we have the next show. We're very conscious that it's difficult for people to see modern art by living art. It's quite different to see modern art by living artists than just modern art. It's a different experience.
I mean, we want a public. That's very important. And we fight for that, because there is nothing else. No? If you do an art show, like maybe for your gallery in London, no? And you do 30 or 40 pictures, no? Maybe you sell 10 or 20, and after they disappear forever. Nobody will see one of these pictures again. That's why we are doing that. We have a new strategy for making art now. We don't do 10 pieces. We do 300 artworks or 150 artworks that we can, what you call, disperse in different places. We can have private gallery shows, we can have museum shows at the same time, we can have catalog at the same time. So it really becomes what you call a more visionary idea of art.
You're always
joins in all the other things like football and politics and the murderers. It's accessible around the world.
I love your grouping. You keep saying football, politics, and murder. I mean, I think people are going to go away.
It's three very important.
The 3 least pleasant things in the world for us. We've nothing against footballers, on the other hand.
You always. I mean, one of the. I think the characteristics of every work every picture you've made, not the postcard pieces, is that images of the two of you are there. People then wonder whether one can perceive your work as a form of self-portraiture. How do you respond to that?
We think that's very simple, that we are speaking to the people. Every artist and every writer was like that, really. We just took it one stage further. You don't say to a person when you're in a museum, come and look at this bit of grass in a tree in this picture. You say, look at this fantastic Van Gogh, because you know it's Van Gogh speaking from the grave. If you say to anybody on the street, Charles Dickens, even if they've never read a book, something comes into their head. That's the force of culture. So it's like our signature in a way, being in the picture.
Creating an image.
Us and the viewer, the relationship between.
We speaking to the viewer, creating a very simple image. Even that's why our suits are very important. It simplifies everything, and what do you call it is very focused.
How do the suits simplify it? You mean it's like a uniform? You don't have to think about it, and it's immediately identifiable as Gilbert and George. This is what you wear.
First of all, it saves time because we don't have to think about fashion. We don't have to, like our city friends, they have to throw their suits out every 2 years because of the wrong fit, the wrong cut. And we never wanted to be like the cliche of the scruffy artist with the weird beard and the sandals spattered with paint. We always wanted to be the artist that we said the mother wouldn't be ashamed of. It didn't work out exactly like that, I'm afraid. It's also very good because you can always get a table in a restaurant and you're never searched at airports.
But we managed to arrange for a very clean, what you call, environment. No? Like our house, we never cook. No? We don't go to galleries. And so we are simplifying no music in the house ever, no alcohol in the house ever, except when we have friends who be going out. And so it's a very simple life, very concentrated life. No? We don't have to, we never answer the phone.
No, that is true. I can verify that, yes.
It's very simple. We need acres and acres of emptiness in front of us before we can begin to make a group of pictures. If our life is cluttered, then we cannot even begin to make those pictures. We need silence, emptiness, dead-headed, zonked, and then we can create something.
And be alone. That's very important.
I've never asked you this question publicly. You can slap me or not answer it if you want.
Slap you first.
Slap me first, yes.
You should be so lucky.
Would you describe, what is the essence of your relationship then? Creative, personal, or whatever. Is it based on love, whatever that means? I mean, is and that's a creative thing?
It's the world's greatest force. That's where people say, I saw a film last week, I'd love you to see it. Or I'd love you to read this book I've just finished. It's the driving force. When mankind loved the idea of flying enough, they managed to get the aeroplane.
Maybe we still want to reaching for paradise.
No, love is very important. Even I think our pictures are all connected with love as well as everything else. Yeah?
It's very clear, hearing you in person, I'm sure everyone will be getting this, is that there's a kind of gentleness in a way, and there's obviously a humour and a sharpness, but your pictures are tough. I mean, Michael Bracewell said of the Jack Freak pictures that he thinks they're probably the most violent pictures you've ever made. Are you angry, or is anger relevant at all to what you're trying to express?
Of course.
In what way?
That doesn't mean to say that we make pictures that would alienate or offend people. We still want to get away with it. We want to deal with all of the difficult subjects and not send people running out of the museum or gallery or getting the police in. It's like the lady friend of ours who took her mother to the Tate Modern exhibition in the hope that the mother would be shocked or offended by something. So they went through the exhibition. When they came out, the mother said, well, I'm not entirely sure of every single one of their pictures, dear, but they do dress very nicely. So we'd got away with it, you see.
What about the other story? It's more interesting.
Which one?
Baby asking.
Oh, again, it's fairness. One of the invigilators at the Tate Modern told us a wonderful story. He was in one of the galleries of our retrospective, and there was a nice middle-class lady, probably from Hampstead or Kensington, with her 3 small children, and they were standing in front of one of our rather explicit diagrammatic pictures called Sperm Eaters. And one of the children, they both looked for a long time, then one of the children said, can you do that, Mummy? And being a very nice, sensible, educated lady, she replied, sometimes, darling. If we all had mothers like that, eh?
I think this accusation has died down, but various feminist art historians pointed out that there were no women in your pictures. How do you respond to that now in 2011?
Quite exhausted, because I thought every artist can do whatever he wants, not in some way.
And also because we started as artists being in the picture, and we continued that with other people, it just became people of our own sex. Yeah? We felt that we were also doing pictures more especially for women than the other artists, because the sex that generally, majority for the female is the male. Yeah? People,
yes,
women normally had to look at female nudes in every exhibition.
And we felt anyway, for the last 300 or 400 years, if you go to a museum, you see mostly naked ladies. That's all about that. And we feel very much it's simply because the man had the checkbook. No? That's why. If the woman would have had a checkbook, they probably would have bought full of naked men.
No, the history of art would have been different. Yeah?
Yes.
We know that if a pair of portraits of a 19th century couple, two frames, and a portrait of a lady with a vase of flowers on the table beside her, goes to auction, that will be 3,000, 3,500. Then the one of her husband in military costume fetches nothing. Nobody wants a portrait of a man in a khaki uniform with a gun. So we're trying to redress the balance in some way.
Absolutely.
And I think it's very good. They should be lucky that we are doing that. No? For the first time, even it's very interesting because men are the ones who are terrified of naked man. Even when we do the big shows, what called the museum's director, they are terrified that we have that they could call them like homosexual art, and they're totally terrified by that. Women are not by that. That's quite interesting.
It is. I like that answer. Even though you said you were exhausted, you rose to that one pretty well. And I suppose, in a sense, we could say that you're feminist artists of the sort.
We are feminists in that the feminists say that you should take the adult books from the top shelf in the newsagents, should pull them down, because they don't want the image of the woman for men. So we're the right artists.
Sure, we are
the
probably
feminists.
women with dicks. Yeah.
You've mentioned religion, and you've said that there was a time when you strongly decided to take a stance against it. Do you still feel strongly against organised religion?
More and more, absolutely. Ban religion, that's our slogan. Oh, yes.
Religion became more powerful, so our objection to it strengthens as well. Yeah.
Even
as we speak at the moment, people are committing suicide, murdering, assassinating, executing people in the name of religion, in countries that many of you have been on holidays, I'm sure. It's a great shame, and we should all come to terms with that.
Even we became aware of that like 10 or 15 years ago, because before that religion didn't mean too much. You ignored it in some way. But then through Islam, they became again very, very powerful. All the newspapers in London, they only talk about religion day and night. And you realize, like even we are in Fournier Street. On one end we have the what they call the mosque, and the other end we have the Anglican church. So non-stop, you are confronted by religion, non-stop. And they accuse you all the time to be secular, that the secularists are very aggressive, they want to say.
Which is totally unfair, because the religious people have a total supremacy. They have headquarters in every village. Yeah?
Churches
they have the police on their side, they have the government on their side.
So it's a battle.
Yeah, we think it would be better if religion came under the same legal umbrella as all of us. That would be one start, so that the Trades Description Act would apply to them. Yeah, so a marmalade company cannot say that eat this marmalade and you'll go to heaven. I mean, it's nonsense. They lie. Yeah?
But how do you feel that the history of art has been dominated by religious imagery? I mean, Western art.
Yeah,
it's not the history of art. It's the history of religion. All of the national galleries should take the religious pictures out and put them in a different department, like Americans put sporting pictures in a different department.
It's propaganda for the church. That's what it is. Only the 18th century liberates themselves from the propaganda from the church.
So you don't feel connected to that tradition, where some of the greatest artists have produced what is broadly recognized, even by secularists, as amongst the greatest achievements in Western art that may be religious?
They just did what they were told. They weren't crazy artists like us saying, what do we want to say to the world today?
They
just did yet another Madonna with the baby. Yeah?
So art's one of the ways that you make this view clear, and the Son of a God pictures are amongst your most confrontational in that respect?
Yes.
There are some. I mean, we have full of subjects that we are circling around that, no?
And are there subjects, or have there been pictures that you've started to make where you have realized that the consequences may be extreme in terms of legal, moral, physical reaction to it, or have you never self-censored?
We never asked that question before doing it. No?
I think we instinctively know where to draw the line. We don't want to be murdered. Yeah, it's very simple. And strangely, we also have to be fair to say that we also have support from religious groups, from the clergy. We went to see the beautiful abbey designed by our favorite 19th century architect, Pugin, in Ramsgate on the south coast. And the door was locked, there was nobody inside, and a passerby said, if you knock at the monastery across the road, they'll give you a tour of the abbey. So we knocked at the monastery door. After a long pause, a very elegant, elderly, beautifully dressed monk appeared at the door, and we asked him if we could see the church. He said, yes, of course. If you come back at 2:30, I'll arrange for one of our curates to show. Oh dear, you're the artist, aren't you? We have many of your books in our library, you know. So that's quite interesting.
I mean, we have a lot of religious books as well. We have a lot of catechisms, and they are extraordinary because they are sins that crying out to heaven for vengeance. No? And we read this extraordinary, extreme stuff. No? And we have full of what we call, we are not anti the idea of the suffering Jesus. No? We have full of Jesus heads in our house. No? We even have one that is extraordinary, like a self-portrait of Jesus, what we call done maybe by Samuel Palmer. That is extraordinary. So it is we like the suffering person. We just don't like when they create a dogma.
Sure. But
it's all right to have beauty and faith and understanding that it extends to the hospitals and the schools and the universities, but we don't want a religion that's going to beat us up.
Is art, though, has art become a surrogate religion?
Oh, yes. In some way, I think.
It's another way of thinking in a broader way.
Yes, searching. It's a kind of search. No?
And is that your religion? I mean, if you confess to having one, that would be it.
It's our second, yeah.
Your second religion. There's about 5 minutes left, and I'm under strict instructions to stick to time. And I'm conscious that I've monopolised Gilbert and George. I've got plenty more I want to ask them. But are there questions from the floor? Do people have questions they'd like to fire at Gilbert and George? Maybe that's the wrong phrase, to give to Gilbert and George rather than fire at Gilbert and George.
Maybe we didn't discuss how we make our pictures.
We could do
It
that.
seems there are no questions anyway.
Oh, great. Well, I'll use the time then. I mentioned the computer, and you said you haven't talked exactly about how you make the pictures. There was a big shift, but what is the process of making your pictures in the past and then after 2003 in the computers, and how's that changed it for you?
Both ways are very connected. Gilbert, you can explain better how it transferred over from one form to another.
It's very simple, because first we create what we feel the subject that interests us, no? And we start to take images, no? We are started in subjects, no? And we try to take maybe thousands of images, no? Of us, outside subjects, inside, outside, and then we categorize it in what we call shifts. And then we create a composition from this, but immediate composition. We don't want a perfect composition. Then we run out to the studio and come back in again. And then maybe we are totally different the second. No? That's how we do it. And now we are doing it with computer even faster, because it's really in front of your face. No? You don't even have to go up ladders on the studio, on the wall. We used to have enlargers, and we used to have masking of pieces. No? Now we don't have to do that. It's just an extraordinary machine to make art for us. It's just so direct and so near to your brain. No?
But is the process a journey? Do you have a strong sense once you begin what the picture's going to look like, or is it?
Yes.
Okay, so it is towards realizing something that you've already envisaged.
Yes.
And more, even with these pictures, and especially with the next pictures, which will be called the London pictures, they'll be more and more automatic. So we will have a system and rules before we start making the pictures that more or less they make themselves, one by one.
Accidents, one after another.
Explain how that would work then with the London pictures.
With the London pictures, it's comparatively simple to explain, because we collected over a 6-year period the posters outside of newsagents' shops, which tell what's in the newspaper that day. So it might say, woman raped in park, man killed on tube, boy killed on cycle. And we collected all of those for 6 years, and then we divided them into their key words. So there's accused, attack, rape,
police,
babies, police, and
cute kids, mother, grandfather.
Everything you can think of in a way. Nothing pleasant, but a lot of different subjects. And so wherever we had 15 of rape, or 15, that would make a 16-part picture, so we wouldn't have to decide. So they've made up 292 pictures, which we're busy with at the moment. And of course, the type is black, the background is white. To highlight the word is red is the best thing to highlight. And the only thing that is in all of the pictures, other than those texts, is the human person, whether it's a rapist or a rape person or a policeman or a preacher. So we have flesh. So it's black and white and red and flesh. So we don't have to think what color for the next picture or anything. They just how they more or less make themselves.
It's like a kind of reflection of London that you see through these images. And we realized that we managed to steal 3,900 of these posters.
You stole them?
Yeah.
It's
Every night.
very strange.
How do you steal them?
It's very strange. People say, why didn't you ask the shopkeeper? We tried that at first, and they become completely aggressive and suspicious. It's extraordinary. So the only way is for one of us to go in the shop and buy a Mars bar to distract the assistant, while the other one slips the poster out and steals it. And we did that 3,700 times. Only once we were nearly caught by a policeman, an over-enthusiastic young policeman ran up behind us and said, excuse me, what's going on here? So I had to think very quick. I said, well, at our school, so I established myself as a teacher or headmaster. We had a debate about antisocial behavior and crime, and all of the teachers and our pupils came to the same conclusion, that we should be doing more, not leaving it all to the police, but we should all be doing more to help discourage this sort of, oh sir, he said, if only more people were like you. And off we went with our poster.
But quite exciting, don't you think?
I think it's wonderful. I think it's an incredible series, and it's going to be shown in London, all being well, sometime early next year, and then around the world. On which note, it's nearly time to end, but you mentioned teaching there. I love the idea that you posed as a teacher or a headmaster. I also think it's good to end a talk with you giving advice of some sort or other. I know there are some students in the audience, and I know there are some teachers in the audience. What would your advice be now to young students just starting out 40 odd years after you did in this larger extended art world that you've described?
We have always the same reply.
There are only two pieces of advice that we've managed. There are only two pieces of advice really that we believe are helpful, and we always say to the student, when you forget about it now, but tomorrow morning when you wake up, sit on the edge of your bed, don't open your eyes, and think, what do I want to say to the world today? Don't move from there until you've decided. It doesn't matter how you're going to say it, whether you write or draw or paint or sculpt, but just think, what do I want to say to the world today? And the second piece of advice is,
Fuck the teachers.
before they fuck you.
On which note, we should end this tea party. Gilbert George, thank you very much. Thank you.